We're back with Civil Discourse Now. I'm not Paul Ogden.
I'm not Mark Small.
We are streaming to you live from Aesop's Tables at 600 East Mass Ave near downtown Indianapolis. It's a marvelous place, marvelous facility, really neat surroundings, neat menu, excellent selection of beers and house wines. And no, I've never had beer, breakfast
Coffee.
beer.
Breakfast stout.
No, I've had beer at 7 in the morning.
I hadn't been to bed
You
yet.
didn't know it was 7 in the morning.
I was an undergraduate. I was at DePaul. You'd have to understand winter term. But this is a nifty place. This is an LGBT-friendly establishment. This is on Mass Ave. It's a neat place. We are streaming to you live on Indiana Talks. Indiana Talks is an internet network, I guess you'd call it, of shows that originate basically in Indiana. And we don't necessarily agree with the views or philosophies of all the other shows on Indiana Talks, but it's a nifty thing for First Amendment expression. Gary Snyder has started. If you go to the Indiana Talks website, there's a donate button. If you hit that donate button, that enables Gary to buy equipment and software to further this network. Our guests today are Maya Axton, who's a small business owner and blogger, and blog information.
CreatingMaya.com.
And
It's
Annette,
with an H.
MIAH.
and Annette Gross is state coordinator for PFLAG and also a member of the Indianapolis chapter. And you're
IndiePFlag.org.
And what is PFLAG?
Parents, families, and friends of lesbians and gays. We provide support to parents when they find out that their kids are LGBT.
and Zach Adamson, who's city county councilor at large. Zach, your website information.
www.adamsonforindy.com.
Your quest.
Just
And your favorite color. What's the average velocity of a laden sparrow?
What's the new full LGBTQ term? I will donate to your re-election campaign if you can name the entire thing.
I saw this question the other day written out, and I had to Google it, so I do know it if I see it all written out. But
Mine didn't say how much.
but I have to see it all written out. I can tell you what they are.
We've been talking about LGBT rights. We just were talking about hate crimes and in distinction between hate crimes and I said that's adding an element. You guys are talking about the effect that it has on a community and the fear in the community. I think if we effectively apply laws, we should effectively apply the laws we have, and if people are being harmed, and if they are being harmed in the lesbian, gay community, we should go after those people that commit those crimes.
And like you were saying earlier, there is the only redeemable bit of any hate crime laws is that if the prosecutors drop any of the violent crimes, the federal government can step in and still prosecute and provide funding for prosecution
and that's
for violent crimes and everything else. So that's the only good part is that the federal government can step in and make sure violent crimes are actually prosecuted.
And then we'll transition then to the next aspect, and this was the thing that Paul was expecting us to start the show with, and we're coming to you live from Aesop's Tables with our live studio audience, our fans that follow us.
I don't know how live they are.
Well, and that has to do with marriage and the rights and what I don't understand is how with 6,000-7,000 years of written human history, in all that time, poets the entire time have struggled with being able to define and describe love. I don't understand how a state legislature in the United States today can set about trying to define love between two people on any adequate basis.
They're not trying to define love.
According to them, marriage and love are independent things. This has got nothing to do with the
That's
other
the
one.
problem. They're trying to define something that really never existed. They're saying that marriage between a man and a woman only has existed for centuries and centuries, and it hasn't. Marriage was a contract. It was a contract between one family and another for reasons of economy.
Oh wait, I read Romeo and Juliet, or the modern version, which is West Side Story.
West Side Story, right? But it never had anything to do with love. And what our argument is that in today's world, people want to be connected. They want to have a relationship, and they want that legal relationship and the benefits that go with it. And there's no reason why they shouldn't.
And the benefits that go with marriage are numerous.
Over
1,138 federal benefits.
Right.
Being married.
So
you get that the second. If you know somebody for an hour and a half who'll get married in Vegas, you have 1,138 special benefits.
No questions asked.
Whether or not you can procreate or not, two 95-year-old people can get married and immediately have
Right.
those
My
benefits.
sister and her husband never had babies. Now, according to what Indiana's saying, they shouldn't have been allowed to get married.
Their reasoning behind it. They're saying
That was one of them.
One of the reasons, right.
Right,
So,
and my mom, my dad passed away, my mom got married later in life, and she couldn't, obviously that was not about procreation. So
In
I don't
fact,
think that's very strong.
their arguments are falling like a ton of bricks.
even among Republicans.
Yeah.
Well, and I think this last election had a lot to do with it because, and this might age me somewhat, but when I was in college, there was acceptance of people who did whatever in their private lives, but there was intolerance amongst a lot of people too in school. And DePaul was a relatively liberal-minded liberal arts school. The youth today are much more accepting of other people. There's a much higher level of understanding and acknowledgement that people are different. And I think that the age of the electorate is such that it's getting younger and there's more acceptance by people and a recognition that people have to have their rights recognized. And so marriage is one of the fundamental things, a relationship between two people.
I don't think the electorate's getting necessarily younger, it's just the older people are dying and being
Well,
replaced.
it's both. It's both. And I think one of the reasons, in my mind, I'm not a politician, I'm not a lawyer, but my feeling is that our legislature wants to push this through as fast as they can because they know that time is against them. They know that the more time they give it, the more we will be able to go out there, tell our stories, and impact people so they'll understand why this is important.
And ultimately, that goes to the whole argument of whether or not this is an appropriate action at all.
Right.
Is a constitutional amendment to do anything when you know most certainly that society is evolving in the opposite direction? And the whole point of what they're doing now is not to protect something for longevity, but rather to enshrine something and a snapshot in something that isn't even current anymore.
Make it harder to change.
Sure.
The only constitutional amendment that I can think of that, well, actually, if you look at prohibition was enacted to stop people from drinking.
That didn't work.
And 12 years later, it was repealed. And so when they're wanting to do something that puts social activities of people into the Constitution, it doesn't necessarily
I wouldn't
work.
even call this a social activity.
No.
I would call this a matter of civil rights.
Right.
And it goes down to the equal application of law and contract law.
Right.
I mean, the same thing with the damn right to work bill. I mean, you've got them going in and saying contract law, we control that now. You can't do this, you can't do that. We can step in and say who you can partner with and who you can make contract with. The government's there is there to support and back up contracts between consenting individuals or businesses. Well, now they're coming in and saying who you can make contracts with. And that's the problem. It's not about granting rights or anything else because we don't derive rights from the government. They're supposed to protect our contracts and our rights from one another. But that's not happening. I mean, you passed this bill. I mean, why are we involved in marriage in the first place? That's my stance on it, is we should not go pass any new marriage bills or anything else. Get the government out of marriage in the first place. Enforce contract law.
So you wouldn't have marriage licenses?
No, why do I have to go to the state to ask permission to be married to somebody?
And look, theoretically,
you get your rights. Then you won't have those rights, those benefits.
Yeah, I mean,
contract.
No,
you put in your contract. You got visitation rights. You got the citizenship thing. You've got the school recognition.
It's still illegal.
Death benefits, Social Security, inheritance rights.
I mean, Maya, I love the idea that you're wanting to make more work for the legal community because really, if you're going to require that somebody enter into this lengthy contract thing, that really is feeding into my profession. But I don't want that kind of work. And I think that by saying, look, we have marriage, this is a long-standing institution, It's just that we have to recognize civil rights of individuals to enter
And I
into
also
that.
want to say that as far as the religious aspect of it, no one is saying to any religious organization, you have to do this. If the Catholic Church doesn't want to give, their blessing, they don't have to.
Just as it is now with other religions.
Right. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But you still have to have that legal government protection.
Yeah, well, Sarah and I were married in the ceremony we wrote ourselves.
Right, so you didn't have
and we had a judge.
We were talking about public
right.
services. Churches, there could be a church across the street. They're using the public streets and sidewalks and lights and power.
But they don't pay taxes for it.
But they're providing a service, right? Marrying somebody, that's technically providing a public service.
No, that's a right of religious service. It's not.
It's not.
Right,
it's
but
not a
if I have
service.
a religious store, there's a tea shop downtown.
And,
That's very religious.
here's how we know
why
it's not
why
a
should we
public.
not force
This is why it's
churches
not
to
a
marry
public.
people?
You have to think of religion as sort of a private club, almost. If you look at it in that sense, it's not really a public accommodation.
But we can ban smoking in private clubs and bars.
Look, I can't get married in the Catholic Church. I'm not Catholic.
Churches never,
I'm not going to sue them
they allow everyone.
to let them marry me.
Here's how you know that it's a matter of civil versus religious. If you go to your church, have a religious ceremony, and have a marriage through that religious ceremony, and expect to have your marriage recognized by the government, it won't be. But if you go to the clerk's office, have a certificate done, have your marriage certified by the government, and skip the church altogether, you're still married.
No, you're not. Not yet.
Well, but you could go to a judge or somebody.
No, all you have to do is you have to go to a person who's appointed judge for the day.
Yeah, that's what we attorneys do.
And
For the day.
then evince a will to be married. And so I did a marriage ceremony. I said, "Do you want to be married?" And they said yes. And I said, "You are." That was the ceremony. That's all you need.
Right. But the religious aspect is nowhere in there. I mean, it doesn't have to be in there. So the government doesn't recognize religious marriage. They recognize civil marriage.
Right.
And so the importance is that the partners, by becoming married, then have benefits.
Yes.
And also, here's one thing that
certain rights.
Yeah,
And protections.
Well, they're called benefits, but they are rights and protections. One
Right.
thing that I get upset about then is when a couple of years ago we were talking about this issue, and everybody's going, well, if it's a city employee, their partner should be able to get health insurance, which makes sense to me. But my point is, everybody should be able to have.
Exactly.
We should have single payer.
But I really, and Annette, you and I had a discussion on the phone about this. I strongly believe in the institution of marriage, and I strongly believe in the government sanctioning that, and because it's an important building block of society. To me, the issue is: are you going to deny a whole class of people that right to enter into?
All they want to do is make their lives better. They want to make their lives better for them, for their children.
I believe in the institution of marriage. I just don't believe it's an exclusive club that only certain people have the right to enter into.
Yeah.
But one thing I don't like is the idea of marriage-like civil unions.
Separate but equal doesn't work.
Well, and one thing I didn't agree with, the domestic partnership benefits before the council, I agreed with it because same-sex couples weren't allowed to be married. Once that happens, I do not want that to be the law. I don't like that, in fact. And I think you exactly and I may disagree on that. But I don't like the idea that you should get benefits from living together with someone without making that commitment.
If we break that down, the reasoning behind why a company, the city or a company would give benefits to their employees, I don't think it's validated necessarily because of marriage in itself. I think you give benefits to people, especially health insurance and sick leave and things like that, because it strengthens whatever family life that is, whether it's marriage or civil unions or domestic partnerships at all. And the company, as well as civil society, has an interest in ensuring that that home life, that home unit, is as stable as it can be, is as productive as it can be, and is as fulfilled as it can be, and protected as it can be. So the city has an obligation or has a desire to make sure that the private lives of its workers are held intact and fortified and strengthened.
But if you're going to do that, if you're going to have a category apart from marriage, then why deny that those benefits to people like myself who have cats and don't have a partner?
Well, why deny the individual? It's not equal application of law to do anything with marriage, because you give all these benefits to people, they can never ever get them outside of getting married. So how is that fair? That's not equal application of law. We're all individuals. That's the largest form in this country.
That's what I'm saying.
So I mean,
I'm saying that I don't think you should dissolve it once there is gay marriage.
But there should be no special benefit that gives two people.
Well, I think that two people should be able to do. I think domestic partnership should be a permanent part of the employment.
And we're at the end of this segment. We're going to be back in just a second.